How's it going, y'all? Aiden Anderson here with Moscow Report. It's election season here in Moscow once again, and that means it's time for another round of Candidate Candids. In this series, we talk to candidates running in the local elections to learn more about them, their platform, and what they hope to do in office if elected. We're focusing on the city-level races this year, and in this video, we've got Moscow mayor candidate Alex Simon. Let's get into it. How are you doing today?
So far, so good. Yeah.
I should mention, just because at the time of this recording, it is now the start of the second month of campaign season. So I just want to ask, how has it been going so far?
It's steadily increasing in intensity and paying attention to details and figuring out my campaign team and what they say and what they mean and differentiating those kinds of things. So everybody's been very patient and understanding and helpful. So it's an ever increasingly good experience, if that's
good. That's good.
Something to be said.
I have to ask, because it seems, just from what I can gather, this is your first time running for a position of any kind as far as politics goes.
Well,
correct?
I was a precinct committeeman years and years ago in a former life, but nothing I had to campaign for. That was the kind of thing you threw your hat and your name on the ballot, and if you got it, you got it. But this is the first time I have campaigned for a position.
Yeah.
And
I guess I have to ask, is there anything that, going into it, you may have some degree of expectation one way or the other as to how you think it's going to go or what's going to be entailed when you're campaigning, even if you haven't done it before? What sorts of things have struck you as, you know what, I was expecting this and it happened, and what sorts of things are unexpected? Like, oh, that came out of left field. I wasn't expecting that was something I was going to deal with.
Well, I haven't done too much yet that enables me to answer that question in any detail with any juicy anecdotes, but I recently got my campaign signs, and there's a big stack of cardboard out there, and I'm like, oh my goodness, how are we going to get these all in somebody's yard? Got to identify people, make the connections, go do the work. And that's been a few days now, and as I've done it day by day, it's an easier thing to wake up, okay, I'm going to go do this. So I find that it starts out daunting, and it gets extremely manageable, very short order. But I haven't been to any of the candidate forums yet, haven't met up with Haley in person in any format. So those are things that are yet unknowns that I'll have to encounter and deal with.
And as far as campaign forums, those are things that are upcoming, so
Correct.
You're waiting to gotcha.
Correct.
Well, that might be getting a little bit ahead of the audience here, but I suppose now I should backtrack a little bit. And since you are a newcomer in this race, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I was raised in the state of Maryland, just north of Washington, D.C. I'm an only child. And my father was an electrical engineer. He also had a degree in computer science, and so he was a technically minded guy. My mom was an administrative secretary or an executive secretary, so she was used to hobnobbing with the necktie crowd in the office. Had a great upbringing, great neighborhood. Hobbies, I discovered internal combustion engines at age 10, and that has been a lasting hobby up to this very day. I am still closely associated with old muscle cars. And so I have a strong feeling that is what ultimately sent me into mechanical engineering, was all the mechanical stuff you interact with in an automobile. And so fast forward to 1984, I left the state of Maryland and came out here to Idaho and entered school at the University of Idaho. And 4 years later left with a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering. I had attempted to get into the Air Force, but it turns out I was a little late getting to college. I did another career in printing before I went into engineering. And that was just enough to disallow me from pursuing an Air Force career. I was going to be 5 months too old when I got out of flight school. So I quickly pivoted and applied with the Boeing company and got on with a Boeing commercial airplane over in Seattle the very same summer I graduated. And 36 years later, I retired. I didn't do all my time at Boeing. I had also worked at 3 other companies doing other aspects of aircraft in the aircraft industry, but all in support of commercial aircraft. But I started with Boeing, finished with Boeing.
Gotcha. And just to be clear, what was the period of time that you were involved in the world of airplane engineering, whether at Boeing or otherwise?
All of them. All 36 years was aircraft.
Gotcha. So I'll have to ask, because it's the rare person who can say that they've worked at Boeing for that long. What are some key takeaways that come to mind when it comes to your experience working there, your experience in just the engineering world in general? What do you got?
Let me ask you for some clarity on that. In terms of through the eyes of a politician, how does my Boeing pedigree help, or just engineers how they see the world in general?
Just looking at the world in general, just your life experience and how that's shaped you as the person you are today. Politics is secondary to that, I suppose.
Well, no, I can see connections. You gave me what I needed. So in the world of airplanes, it's all about contingencies. So you can't focus on folly if it's not really going to either add to the safety of the operation of an airplane or the building of it even. You know, if things you want to have done don't affect the airplane in the big picture, why do it? So the engineers were always being tasked with assess the value of what it is we think we want to do, compare it to how hard is that to do, how much might it cost, logistically, how difficult can it become, do we really need to feel that pain? And then on the other side, like I started with the contingencies, you can't pull over to the side of the road when you're 35,000 feet in the air and sort out your problems. So we had to build a lot of backups to the backups so the airplane always safely made it to the ground. So I think about that now, drag that kicking and screaming to now, me pursuing politics, being able to sort out stuff that we can't ignore versus stuff that we don't really have to care for. You know, must have versus we'd like to have. I think a lot of politicians talk to their constituents in terms of we got to have this, got to have this, got to have this. I'm passionate about that. And if you could sweep the camera over to the side, you'd see the engineer going, that one, yeah, this one, not so much. So I think that is going to be a big, how do I say this, carrot in my hat, you know, a big attribute that I think the city of Moscow will appreciate if with the engineering experience, I can look at things and say, you know, that does look important when you're just sniffing around it, but when you really dig in, it doesn't deliver a lot of value or a lot of function or whatever is in play. And maybe we can avoid that or ignore that and focus over here and perhaps get a project done that was otherwise going to be stalled or something to that effect. So that's probably the most poignant example of engineering applied to something outside of a factory or an airplane project.
Right. And of course, I mean, there's some element of like the civil engineering world. There's a decent amount of actual engineering discussions that go on with infrastructure projects. But to set that aside for a second, when you talk about bringing that engineering mindset to the way that the city operates, are you saying that from the perspective of, you know what, these are some principles that I'd like to apply in general? Or are there actually some specific issues you can think of where it's like, actually, I think I can bring this, you know, my engineering brain to this particular issue and either demonstrate that it is something that we need to focus on, or conversely, that actually we don't need to focus on it as much. We don't need to prioritize it as much.
I'd actually come up with a third possibility, and that would be one thing I've said in some of the material I put on Facebook is when I was sorting out what to do to an airplane while we were building it, how much of a repair does it need to get back to where we wanted it, I had to rely on other people, other experts. So the one good thing in an expert, I have my expertise, and some subset of that expertise will carry over into city projects, things that City of Moscow will find itself wanting to do, and I'll be on that team as the mayor, and we'll all be rolling up our sleeves and noodling it out. And there's going to be times when I realize I'm clearly out of my area of expertise, but that guy or that gal seems to know that angle or that technology or some nuance, and I will lean on them heavily for their contribution. So recognizing that there is uncertainty in every chair in the office, but altogether, with everything we bring to the table, I think we can bracket or, encompass the challenge we face as a city, and get the problems not only solved, but carried out, carry out the solutions and get to the end product and finish something and move on to the next thing.
And along those same lines, do you think that there's anything right now, because obviously the city has its list of strategic priorities that they, over the years, with their current administration, I guess, have developed and focused on. Is there anything on that list or anything not on that list that you're looking at and saying, the city is focused on this, I don't know that they need to be focused on that as much, and then on the other side, the city doesn't appear to have a focus or prioritization of this, and they really should? Any items or issues like that you're thinking of?
Yeah, I think the city overall, I've been reading the comprehensive plan. So I'm an outsider. I have not been inside City Hall in the smoke-filled back rooms talking about the issues. So there are city councilmen and mayors and all those folks that have seen behind the green curtain, if you will, and they know the realities of what it is we're trying to do. And so I read what they shared in the comprehensive plan, and I'm impressed. I think there's some very intelligent people wrote some very cogent and lucid descriptions of what the city needs to accomplish to secure the city. Everybody goes to bed at night knowing they'll have a glass of water in the morning, streets to drive on, roads to walk on, sidewalks. But the one thing that does jump out at me is the ability to finish stuff. I have been reading in that document, there's a lot, at the end they always spec out the goals. All right, here's the conditions, here's how these things are done, yada, 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 and here are our goals. And there's a lot of stuff that just hasn't gotten done. And I don't know, I wouldn't try or presume to be able to put a finger on the individual that held that up. I wouldn't say the mayor's responsible or some staff person. I don't know that. I wouldn't dream to try. But I really think we need to get a list of priorities. And for me, where I sit and talking to the people I've spoken with, this whole aquifer issue and the well number 10, we're so close to the finish line by reading the document. The well's drilled. I think the casing is in. A lot of the piping infrastructure underground, I think, is in. And back in, I want to say 2020, bids went out seeking bids to develop the well site. I don't know what that word means. I don't know what is undone. But it seems like in reading the whole story, we're close. And that well number 10 would really settle a big issue for this city in terms of reliable water and as warm a fuzzy as we can develop for growing the city and the needed infrastructure to wash, put water into people's homes and electricity and all that. Having well 10 up and running is a big milestone. And so that's something I would like to think I'd be able to focus on or encourage the staff, the administration to focus on and finish in my term.
Gotcha. I was going to ask if you viewed that as something of an objective that you would like to accomplish. And I mean, you just answered that. Yeah.
I would love to be known as the guy that brought water. I'm not looking for titles and capes and all that kind of baloney, but it would be nice if I left the office and if all they could say is, well, the guy secured the water. Maybe he didn't pave as many roads, and maybe the art crowd's not as happy with him as they could have been. Or, gosh, I wish we had a stage, but you know what? We have water. But if we're lucky, if we're careful and deliberate, maybe we get all these things. We get the water in the ground, out of the ground. We get a stage that satisfies the community in East City Park. We get lights on our ball fields. All kinds of things that are also out there that are undone and need to be addressed.
And you're looking at it as I want to make this into a list of objectives to accomplish, not necessarily projects or programs to begin or make ongoing. I want to see a green check mark at the end of this when I'm done with my time in office, whatever that looks
Yeah.
like.
Yeah, planes in
Gotcha.
pieces don't fly very many places. So a city in pieces isn't going to meet a lot of needs. So we do need to finish stuff. So
One issue along those lines that comes up, at least in the conversations I've had with the city council candidates, is the subject of affordable housing. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that doesn't quite sound like an issue that you can put a box to check off and say, okay, we've finished, we've gotten affordable housing done. It seems like it would be more of a process. But maybe just tell me about your familiarity with that topic and if there's anything you would add to the conversation there.
Well, I can't agree with you more vociferously that it's a big, big project. I think a lot has been done. I've seen some of the recorded sessions of the county commissioners and talking about the area of city impact to the north and the south of the city. So those are areas where Moscow City Hall is interacting with the commissioners and talking about for future, we need this land, let's work together and figure that out. So the ACI conversation is ongoing, which is a good thing. Also the loop road, to take Highway 95 traffic around downtown, either to the west, which seems to have more traction, no pun intended, than the east. But I see solutions both ways, both directions around Moscow to alleviate traffic through the downtown, preserving the ambiance and the vitality that we really enjoy about downtown, being able to walk around, that sort of thing. So within that area of city, the ACI, we got to talk about plumbing, the water, which well 10 figures into.
Right.
Sewage, stormwater mitigation. How do you manage the stormwater and dumping that back into the land or into the creeks like the one we're next to here? So it's big. There's a lattice work of all kinds of moving parts that we have to coordinate and lubricate and feed. And get this thing running like a muscle car motor, if I can borrow from my stuff.
I was going to say, that's a lot of engineering metaphors right there. But
and so my hat's off to the city hall so far. They have identified the playing field, and they've certainly identified the moving pieces. But they've kind of held. Now their hands are up. We got to get something going, and that's where I think City Hall currently is a little adversarial to the bigger plan, and that is the housing, the type of housing that they're attracting to the city, I think is not going to feed this view or this outlook.
So unpack that a little bit.
Well, in that same comprehensive plan document, they're talking about, of all the housing that we provide in the city, new housing, 70% of it will be multifamily apartments, that kind of thing. And 30% will be single-family units, stuff where you can go and buy and it's your house. The trouble is let's say this goes a little bit sideways. So now you're looking at demographics. What's moving to Moscow? And so in the U.S. Census data says that 22%. What is it? How does it go? In the demographic from ages 15 to 64, that demographic in the United States is growing by 3%. In the state of Idaho, it is growing by 22%. So what that means is there's going to be a lot of households with a lot of young people, and what they're not looking for is an apartment. Houses with families are looking for, or families with children are looking for houses. So the Idaho population is going to grow, and Moscow, being a more vibrant city than most, is going to attract its share of that population. And so I think the burden on the city is not going to be met with more and more apartments. That's just going to be a real problem that isn't going to go away. So, and then there's the other side of things, the population. I'm learning how to appreciate this number. For a population of a country, a nation, to sustain itself, you need to have 2.1 kids per woman to sustain your population and your place in the race, whatever you want to call that. Fortunately, Idaho has a 2.66 ratio.
Okay, so it's not just sustaining; it's growing. Would continue.
But the trouble now is when you overlay that onto life in apartments versus life in houses. In 100 people in apartments, or 100, it was the source, the U.S. data was a little vague. There's only 22 kids per 100 people in an apartment building, typically, because they're smaller bedroom, and smaller quantity of bedrooms, things like that. Whereas in houses, you have 66 children per 100 houses.
Gotcha.
So both of those suffer. They don't add up to the 2.66 or even the 2.1, maybe. So even if you built all houses, you're still going to struggle to satisfy the demand. So we're just going to have to grow. The city's going to face growth no matter what they do. Stick their head in the sand and ignore it, or walk away from this 70-30 ratio into something that's a little more kid-friendly and accommodate the people that grow up here, want to stay here, and their kids, they have kids, and they want their kids to stay here. We're going to have to do something other than apartments to make that happen. That makes sense? Is sort of clear?
And obviously there's only so much that the city itself can do to encourage a developer, for example, to build one kind of housing or another. Are there any particular policies or regulations that you're looking at to say, it would be helpful if the city could address this, because then they could start attracting a preferred form of housing development to the area?
Yeah, now you're opening up a big topic with multiple chapters, because it's a synergy between the city and industry, if you want to call it that, manufacturing or business, and housing. Those three are tightly woven together. So without the housing, business is going to have a hard time attracting people to come work for them because nobody's got a place to live. And then if the city's hostile to growth, they're not going to make it easy for housing to go the way business would like it, and they're not going to make it easy for business to come into the region. So we really have to move all these pieces down the field in a coordinated fashion and keep an eye on that and see how we're doing. You stop every now and then and see, man, we're not getting the business we anticipated. We better spruce up our activities there. So always looking. And that's something I don't have all the answers to. Once again, that's where I would resort to call the developers around and say, hey, we recognize there's a lot of stuff you're told to do before you can build house number one and start advertising homes for sale. Which ones of those are really killing you and don't look from your point of view to bring anything of value to anybody? Is this just some punitive thing that the city dreamed up or the state dreamed up or whatever, and maybe we can go seek remedy? Or the city says, Alex, you guys, you don't understand. We need this because of this requirement or this quality, measure. So have that conversation with all the right players, which is what we did at Boeing. You have limited space in an airplane, and everybody wanted to put their parts inside, the air conditioning guys and the wiring guys and all this stuff, and they had to arm wrestle, but we had to work out our everybody's needs. And I think we can do that same thing here. We can have everybody around the table understand each other's pain, understand what each brings to the equation and what the quality of their portion of the answer. And ultimately, if we get it right, you end up with a city full of houses and happy people and all our needs, not all our needs met, but I mean all the stuff a city is supposed to provide, water, sewage, electricity, you name it, police, fire, all that stuff.
Gotcha.
Handled. So it's a big challenge. And like I said, hats off to the city for laying down the groundwork of how to understand the challenges and now it's time to move on and let's start setting out some goals, establish objectives, measures of success, and then hit the gas.
Gotcha. Switching gears a little bit, obviously, as I've seen with the city council and the mayor's interactions, there's generally a pretty strong degree of unity, and of course, the mayor typically doesn't vote on the decisions being made in council. He's typically there to oversee. But there are times when conflict arises, or there's a huge variety of opinions or strongly held opinions on different issues. How do you, as mayor, if elected, will you seek to bring your voice into those sorts of conversations? Are there particular things you're thinking about in terms of conflict resolution or difficulties you expect to encounter? Talk to us a little bit about that.
There were times when we would be doing meetings. We would have these efforts. I forget what Bowen called them. Continuous quality improvement was the general name of it. And every organization, every discipline, the engineering, the quality control, the designers, the planners, everybody in logistics, everybody that had a stake in the game would get in the room. And one of the tools we used, and I don't know that it would map over directly to City Hall, but you try to assign value, almost like a mathematical equation of somebody's demand, what they think they must have. And you get everybody to label their must-haves, throw them on the table and say, there they are. And now we look at this thing, and then people start asking each other questions. Well, why is that a must-have? Well, couldn't this guy, if he tweaked his a little bit, meet that need over there? And now what you're asking for is just, I'd like it.
Right.
But it's not necessarily a must because we've got this character over here who can fill in the gap or carry the load when you're over budget or whatever. So a system like that, where if we can be honest and sober about what we really need to have versus what it would be nice to have, and ultimately get to where everybody's kind of getting their itch scratched, and we can say, okay, then we've got a decision, and now we've got the problem scoped in such a fashion. Now you guys vote on that. Here's our solution. What do you say?
Right.
Maybe that, like I said, I've never sat in a chair. I don't know how this stuff plays out, but some things just aren't settled by a vote because a vote doesn't define surgical procedures or engineering specifications. Those are what they are because the technology or whatever has ruled. This is how you do this. So hopefully that influences everybody, and maybe a stuck vote becomes majority
Unstuck,
minority
yeah.
kind of thing, and we can settle it.
And of course, you are dealing with it's people that you're interacting with, and so people they don't comport themselves the way that the specific parts of an airplane do necessarily, because they're just more complicated than that, and they've got we all have little inconsistencies by which we apply different standards and different things that we're thinking about. And so it seems like part of what you'd be doing would be cutting through that to the extent that you can to get to okay, we are working together as well as can be reasonably expected in this circumstance. And I imagine there'll be times where that hits its limits, but
I ran into that a lot on the factory floor building the 777. I was in the fuselage structures area, and they would break the plane somehow, putting it together. Things just would go badly. And I'd get a document saying, this is what happened, this is what it's supposed to be like, this is what it's like. And then I had the other side to fill in, here's what we're going to do about it. And so first thing I'd do is ask a mechanic, have you ever done this to the plane before? And he'd say yes or no. And I said, well, how did we deal with this in the past? And he would tell, or how do you feel comfortable dealing with this? And he'd give me an answer. And I'd say, well, that's totally nuts. So I'm going to have to go back and think about things. Or more times than not, he would say, well, this is what we've done in the past. And previous engineers in your shoes said to do this. And he remembered that, and I did. This might have been the first time I'd seen that. So I would rely on his story, and I had my engineering savvy to kind of fit his description into my machine, if you will. But that was fine. I'm not that big of an ego that I got to invent every solution every time. If that person's got a sensible answer, I've got enough wherewithal in me to say, yep, I agree with that. And it does not embarrass me or anything to say, you're right. I'm glad to say somebody's right. So I had to sometimes get a mechanic that just fought me. And I would have to take complex engineering theory or whatever and translate it into a language he understood, and then he could understand why I was breaking him over my knee. Man, we got to do it this way. And he didn't want to because it was hard. And I had to say, this is why. Here's what the plane will feel if we don't do it this way, and use the language that he could comprehend. So that's something I gained quite a skill. And in training young engineers that don't know airplane talk. Idaho like me, they filled me up with great engineering, not word one about airplanes. So now some engineer over there had to fill me up with engineering savvy. And so they had to take me at my infantile starting point and build me up to a seasoned veteran, so to speak. And that's what I had to do with mechanics, is bring them along till they could understand what I needed and why. And that was the challenge for me, to find that language and establish that connection. And that's something I like to think I could do in city council, because people are smart. They might not know airplanes, but it doesn't mean they're not smart. And they know the English language, and they have logic, and they have reason. And so we can appeal to all those common faculties, and I think succeed in communication. So that's it.
Does seem that communication is key in a lot of ways for this particular job. Maybe even backing, switching subjects again, backing even further out, what you've described as sort of your working process for how you'd interact with the world of the city, even though you haven't been there before. Is that part of what provoked you to run for office in the first place, or how did that get started?
So if you were to open up the Boeing, I don't know what you call it, the organizational records and stuff, everybody's got an org chart. We've got the city engineer and then a bunch of engineers and folks underneath him. And Boeing had the same thing. And if you called that the food chain, top of the food chain is mahogany row, bottom of the food chain is all the worker bees, that punch a clock and do their 8 to 5 every day. I was on the bottom rung. I was an engineer. But as engineers go, I was level 5 out of 6. So I was near the top. Level 6 was one guy sat on a throne in some unnamed location. Everybody else just underneath him was level 5. And I got to that point. And so as far as the functional org chart, I was kind of low. The functional org chart. As far as the ad hoc or the day-to-day org chart, when the chips were down, who did you go see? I was at the top of the list. So why did I say all that? Help me out again. Your question was...
Right. Looking at the way that you're thinking about things as far as having an engineer mindset and your experience with Boeing, and then trying to hear from you as well why you decided to run for office in the first place.
Thank you. Excuse me, team. So a lot of times the decisions I was forced to make, or I was working through, could result in $500,000, $1 million that the company would spend to repair an aircraft. And so when you're spending that kind of money for the company, you end up crossing paths with a lot of high-level management people. So I got to where I understood the 30-second elevator story of a very meat grinder of a problem. And mahogany row, as I call it, it's not a derogatory term, it's just they had all the fancy furniture. They wanted to hear, they didn't want to sort out a lot of information. They valued an employee could say, here's what's in the balance, here's what's at stake, here's what we lose if we miss on this answer, that kind of information, so they could probably come up with odds, whatever they got to tell their boss, that kind of thing. So I really enjoyed the executive functioning as I saw it from my chair, because I got invited to a lot of high-level meetings,
Mm-hmm.
and I appreciated what those people were managing. I had my little piece of it, and I got good at it, but I saw some of these high-level guys not manage their other people, the other players very well, and I thought, I'd have done that differently. I'd have talked to that guy out of the lights, not on the spot in front of all these other people. That kind of consideration. So fast forward to a month or two ago, I wasn't doing retirement very well. I have not embraced retirement, and I feel like there's still stuff for me to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so the mayoral thing came up. Folks I was talking with said, Al, you have these kinds of attributes that would serve well in that position. And so I heard those kind of voices enough times that and then going back to my experience at Boeing and thinking that was really valuable. I enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed to help. People sought me out. So all that conspired on one Tuesday evening to, all right, let's push this through. And so I got some counsel from some folks around me, and then toward the end of that week I filed, and here we are.
Here we are. And switching gears over to campaigning briefly. First of all, I mean, we've talked a little bit about how it's gone. There's still a lot to come on the campaign trail, but I assume you've started to interact with people. When it comes to your community interactions, a couple of questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
First off, if somebody who has never heard the name Alex Simon before comes up and just says, "Oh, so you're Alex Simon, what are you running for?" How do you describe both the position as well as what you stand for, what your platform is? And he's like, I'm Alex Simon. I'm running for mayor. My
Gotcha.
hopes and aspirations for the city are
this. Okay, so one thing, there's limited ways I think that the citizens of Moscow can see into the halls, the offices of City Hall, and one of those tools is the city budget. And so I'm not pleased with the city budget. And I think it's a 50-50 problem. 50%, maybe, some ratio. Part of it, I don't understand how this budget got built in the sense of how they report things. And is this the best? It fits our systems the best, and that's why it looks like it does. Or is it just a city structure that doesn't really care what the citizens, they're not reading this thing anyway. It's easy for us to operate within this thing. It gives us flexibility, or even to be cynical, to maybe play favorites if that suits us. I don't know. So one of the things I would like to do is get to know the players. City administrator, big job, big important job. His two helpers is kind of tongue-tied on the titles, but those guys, the city engineering, all the city heads, I would really like to get to know them so I can see if I was totally missing the mark on the budget, or if in fact, no, I kind of had an angle on it. You guys have gotten lackadaisical or whatever it is. Let's sharpen this up a bit, because I don't want our reputation sullied because we just got loosey-goosey.
right.
And we could be showing a much better performance if we just tightened up.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we get some savings out of it to boot.
Right.
So that's one thing I would tell somebody if they started yawning minutes into that conversation, then I'd be switching gears to the other important thing, which is the housing, jobs, infrastructure, growth. So that's, and the water especially. I mean, when I moved back here, everybody's talking water, the aquifer. We got to nail that down. That's just got to go from unknown to known, and then solved. I think we've done a lot of that so far. So how's that? Does that get to your
No, that makes
the
sense.
answer I'm looking at?
If I were to, let me see if I can sum it up in my own words, and you tell me if it's accurate. So, if somebody comes up to you and asks, "All right, Alex, what are you running for?" You would talk about shining a spotlight on the city budget,
Yeah.
seeing what's there, and paying attention to details there to figure out, okay, do we like this? Do we not like this? But one way or the other, shining a spotlight on it. And then the other issue broadly would be growth and all the little challenges and roadblocks that are associated with it,
Yeah.
because Moscow is growing and you want to address that well.
Yeah, and another aspect of that I didn't touch on that you just prompted would be, and this is hard, and I'm not faulting previous city councils and all that for failing at this. I wouldn't even accuse them of failing. But it is really, really challenging to get the sentiment of the public, to get the citizens out here to tell you, you know what you're doing, I love it, keep it up. Or the whole other end of that, man, this is just not cutting it. And how do you get that information into City Hall in an effective way and in a compelling way, so that the council and the staff, you know, and that would fall on me because I'm the executive guy, so I oversee the administrative side of the house.
Right,
Somebody's
right.
got to give those folks their marching orders, and I don't know who's whispering in Bill Belknap's ear, you know, what he's telling the team to go look at. They get a lot of stuff right, so whatever he's got his ear tuned into, keep doing it. But if I can somehow get out amongst the people and find out we really are not getting the itch scratched here, Mayor, can you do something about that? Then I'd have to go into the smoke-filled back room with Mr. Belknap and the others. Ask them, you own these processes. How can you make me happy as the boss? Turning the crank on your machine to do these things that the city people are asking for. That's hard. It's easy to say. I'm not sure how tough it's going to be to do, but that's something I think we really need to get her done. So hopefully that's clear.
No, yeah. I would say it seems to me that there's always going to be a little bit of give and take with that particular
Oh,
issue, simply
absolutely.
because it can be hard to reach a larger populace of people, and
Right.
also it strikes me at the very least as human nature that there's always going to be somebody who's not 100% satisfied with what's going on,
Yeah.
and you are going to be limited in your ability to deliver to 100% of people 100% of the time.
Right.
But if the goal is simply to have a better read or a wider extended conversation with those folks, then you'll be in a better spot overall, if I'm hearing you correctly.
Yeah. And at the same time, if some subset of the population sees what we've chosen to do and they're dissatisfied with that, and then so we move out, you know, and some time goes by and we're working the process and we hit a snag, and lo and behold, it was that person that didn't get their way early on. I'm not embarrassed or whatever to say, wait a minute, we had so-and-so telling us this. They might have a valuable input now because we've hit this unforeseen hang up. So I don't want to alienate anybody, even if I have to tell somebody, it's not your day today. You're not going to get your way on this one. The majority wants to do this. Every now and then the majority zigs when they should have zagged, and that guy, see, I told you so. And I'm like, hey, peace, here we go. Let's get you back to the table. And now it's your turn to help us succeed through this little snarl. So I don't want to make an enemy of anybody. Everybody's got a valid thing to add. It's just sometimes the context isn't suited for that input. So you just got to tell them, yeah, and in certain scenarios, that might have been the thing to do.
Right.
So don't go away because it's a great idea. It just didn't have its day. And then we're going to do this. So hopefully that keeps everybody at the table, thinking my day might come. And so this guy didn't insult me fatally, you know, that kind of thing.
Right. There'll be a little bit of, okay, being able to understand the reasoning in your decision making on something like that.
Yeah, there's value. I see the value. It just doesn't check the boxes on this particular challenge.
When you're trying to address that particular challenge.
Exactly.
Well, I believe we're about wrapped up here, but I want to give you I want to give you time to tell people if they want to find out more about you, where can they go? What sorts of events do you have coming up? Just what's the best way for people to learn more about your
Probably
campaign?
the best thing. I've been enjoying this format, and hopefully readers as well. I have a Facebook page. It's Alex Simon for Moscow Mayor, or Alex Simon for Mayor of Moscow. And it's a Facebook page, and every so many days I'll just pick the topic that's either a burn my shorts or something I'm pleased about, or just something about me that, anticipating what folks want to know to, just smooth out a misgiving or something, or maybe they think, oh, this guy's totally unlike me. I got to go the other way. I want people to have whatever information they require to make a decision for me or for Haley. So that's, populations, they're the reason we're here. I work for the population. So if what I'm selling doesn't hit with a majority, all right, there we are. So go to that Facebook page, and I will be faithful in adding to it. And I think you'll see who I am, what I stand for, and what I hope to achieve, and sometimes how I hope to achieve it. But that's about all I think I got to say. I think I'll let that do it.
Alex, thank you so much for your time.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for coming by.
And that was my conversation with Alex Simon. As with all candidates, I highly encourage you to check them out yourself so that you can go into the election well prepared and educated. We'll have the relevant links posted with this video, and as always, if you have any questions, please reach out. I'm Aiden Anderson, and this has been Candidate Candids. We'll see you next time.